Welcome to the Part S channel. Today we explain Prophets Judges chapter 7 in a clear and simple way, step by step. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide through this explainer today because honestly, we're looking at one of the most fascinating and strategically brilliant narratives in the entire Hebrew Bible. We are going to go verse by verse, right through the text, keeping our focus strictly on the simple, chronological meaning of the story, what we call the Peshat. So let's settle in and let's dive into this incredible chapter.
Just think about this for a second. How in the world did 300 men defeat an army the size of a locust swarm? It sounds totally impossible, right? Almost like a myth. But as we walk through the text today, we're going to uncover the exact sequence of historical events, the deep psychology of the battlefield, and the profound divine strategy that made this absolute underdog story a reality. This isn't just a physical battle. It's practically a masterclass in faith and unconventional tactics. Let's look at exactly where this begins in the text.
So, we open the first verse setting the geographical scene. Early in the morning, Gideon, who by the way is also referred to here by his other name Jerubbaal, gathers the Israelite forces. They're stationed at a water source called the Spring of Harod. Now, understanding the Hebrew here is absolutely crucial. The root of the word Harod actually means trembling or terror. So they are quite literally camped at the Spring of Trembling. And wow, that perfectly foreshadows the fear test that God is about to unleash. Just to the north, looking down into the valley near the hill of Morah, sits the massive encampment of their enemies, the Midianites. You can just feel the tension. The two armies are right within striking distance of one another.
But then, a completely unexpected shift in strategy happens. The Lord speaks to Gideon and tells him that he actually has too many men to deliver Midian into their hands. Now, why would God say this when they're already outnumbered? Well, he explains the core issue. If the Israelites win with a large army, human pride is going to take over. They'll credit themselves, not God, boasting that their own strength saved them. To prevent this human pride, God issues a shocking command. Gideon has to stand right up before his men and make this stunning public announcement. Anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. The response to this announcement is just staggering. Immediately, 22,000 men pack up their gear and walk away. Think about the intense psychological impact of that moment. Gideon is standing there watching literally over 2/3 of his entire fighting force simply turn their backs and abandon the battlefield just because they were terrified. It really highlights the sheer paralyzing terror that the Midianite coalition had struck into the hearts of the Israelites. So this dramatic first troop reduction leaves Gideon with just 10,000 men. Now, 10,000 men is not a small number on its own, but against that sprawling Midianite encampment, it's a vast disadvantage. Yet, God steps in again and tells Gideon the army is still too large. God is purposefully stripping away every single human advantage so that the victory will be undeniably his. To reduce the army even further, God proposes a highly unusual, completely unexpected method. He instructs Gideon to take the remaining 10,000 men down to the water, noting that he's going to sift them right there. The fascinating part here is that the men themselves have no idea they're taking a test. They just think they're going down to grab a drink of water.
Section 1. The Water Drinking Test. Judges chapter 7 verses 4 through 8.
As the men approach the water, God gives Gideon the parameters to separate the troops based entirely on their literal physical actions. He's to separate those who lap the water with their tongues like a dog from those who kneel down to drink. Let's picture this practically, from a military standpoint. One massive group gets down on both knees, putting their faces directly down to the water to drink. By doing this, they completely lose their situational awareness. But the other group, they crouch down, scoop the water up with their hands, and lap it right from their palms. By bringing the water to their mouths, they keep their heads up. They remain alert, constantly watching the horizon for the enemy. God uses this simple, everyday action to make a massive division.
And the result of this test? It's breathtaking. Out of 10,000 men, only 300 men brought the water to their mouths with their hands. The other 9,700 knelt down. God immediately makes a sweeping promise to Gideon, declaring that with just these 300 men, he will save Israel and hand over the Midianites. Consequently, the 9,700 are dismissed to their tents. But pay close attention to an incredibly important detail the text gives us before they leave. The 300 men take over the provisions and the trumpets of all the departing troops. The seemingly minor logistical detail of gathering extra trumpets, that's going to become the absolute cornerstone of their upcoming battle strategy.
Section 2. The Barley Loaf Dream. A Night Infiltration. Now, God knows that even as a seasoned leader, Gideon must be deeply terrified. I mean, he's left with just 300 men against an entire empire. So during the night, God offers a really compassionate concession. He tells Gideon that if he's afraid, he should take his servant Purah and sneak down to the edge of the enemy camp to listen. Gideon and Purah begin this stealth night mission. Creeping right up to the outposts of the enemy camp in the pitch dark, they look down into the valley. The text describes a terrifying scale. The Midianites, the Amalekites, and all the eastern peoples were settled in the valley, thick as locusts. It even adds that their camels were as innumerable as the sand on the seashore. That's a profound visual metaphor. The enemy is a vast, unquantifiable swarm. Honestly, just to stand on the edge of that camp requires a monumental miracle of faith.
That miracle of faith arrives in the form of a conversation Gideon overhears in the dark. He creeps close just as a fearful enemy soldier is telling his friend about a bizarre nightmare. Listen to how the soldier recounts it. "Behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian." The dream continues, with the soldier describing how this tumbling loaf of bread struck a sturdy military tent with such tremendous force that the tent overturned and completely collapsed. It's such a surreal image, isn't it? A simple, poor man's barley loaf representing the impoverished Israelites destroying a powerful military encampment.
But it's the friend's immediate interpretation that changes the entire trajectory of the war. The friend responds without hesitation, declaring that this dream can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon. He states outright, God has given the Midianites and the whole camp into his hands. Even the pagan enemy knows that the God of Israel is actively working through Gideon. When Gideon hears this interpretation, his internal terror just completely evaporates. He immediately bows down and worships. His fear is gone, conquered. He sneaks back up to the Israelite camp, wakes his 300 men, and enthusiastically shouts, "Get up! The Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands."
Section 3. The 300 Attack. A midnight ambush.
So Gideon is preparing an incredibly unconventional attack. He's relying entirely on the element of surprise, deep darkness, and sheer psychological warfare. Get this, he doesn't even ask his men to draw their swords. Instead, he divides his tiny force of 300 into 3 companies of 100 men each, fanning them out to surround the vast encampment. And he places highly specific, strange weapons in their hands: trumpets, empty clay jars, and torches hidden inside those jars. Remember those hundreds of trumpets they gathered from the 9,000 departing men earlier? Well, now they have exactly 300 of them. The plan is simple, but requires absolute perfect timing. Gideon instructs them to follow his lead. When they reach the edge of the camp, they are to blow the trumpets, smash the jars to expose the burning torches, and shout. The timing of this ambush is just brilliant. The text notes that Gideon and his 100 men reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guard. This is roughly midnight. The camp is in deep sleep, and the newly stationed guards have just stepped out into the pitch black. Suddenly, from 3 different sides of the camp, Gideon's men smash the 300 jars simultaneously. The jarring noise of shattering pottery instantly shatters that midnight silence. The hidden torches are revealed all at once, casting these wild, dancing shadows across the tents, and 300 trumpets blast an aggressive charge. Over the deafening, terrifying sound of the trumpets, the 300 men scream their battle cry into the night, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." Imagine being a Midianite soldier waking up to this scenario. You hear 300 trumpets blasting. In ancient military strategy, one trumpet usually signaled the movement of an entire battalion of troops. So to hear 300 trumpets echoing from the hills and to see hundreds of torches surrounding you in the dark, your immediate psychological reaction would be that an army of hundreds of thousands of Israelites had just descended upon you.
The psychological warfare works flawlessly. The text records a scene of absolute chaos. While the Israelites simply held their ground on the perimeter, blowing their horns and holding their torches, the Midianites completely fractured. The enemy ran, crying out as they fled. But the disaster goes even deeper than that. Blinded by panic and the darkness of night, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. The vast locust swarm of an army literally destroys itself from the inside out. The survivors finally break and flee wildly toward the eastern borders.
Section 4. Pursuit and Victory. Chasing the enemy.
The ambush is a total success, but the fleeing army is still massive. So Gideon puts out a call to the Israelites from the surrounding tribes, Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh.
Now, these are likely the very same men who were sent home earlier, but now they're participating in a massive mop-up operation, chasing the enemy out of the land. Furthermore, Gideon makes a brilliant strategic move to cut off the enemy's escape route entirely. He sends messengers throughout the hill country of the powerful tribe of Ephraim, instructing them to come down and seize the waters of the Jordan River. You see, the Midianites are desperately trying to cross the river to get back to the safety of the east. By securing the fords of the Jordan, the men of Ephraim create an inescapable, fatal trap.
This relentless pursuit culminates with the capture of high-value targets. The Ephraimites managed to capture two of the leading Midianite commanders, princes named Oreb and Zeb. This is where translating the Hebrew names adds such rich historical texture. Oreb actually means raven, and Zeb translates to wolf. These fierce, animalistically named commanders were hunted down and executed at locations that forever bore their names as geographical markers of the victory. Oreb was killed at the rock of Oreb, and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. They then brought the heads of these leaders back to Gideon. The victory over the oppressors is absolute and decisive.
Section 5. Key Lessons. A quick recap of Judges chapter 7.
Well, that concludes our historical walkthrough of the chapter. We've seen an army drop from 32,000 down to 300 men, achieving a literally impossible victory. But you know, these ancient texts speak directly to us today. When we break down the core, practical life lessons, three main things really stand out. First, we must learn to rely on God over our own perceived strength. God deliberately stripped away resources to prevent human pride. Often, our greatest victories happen when our own resources are limited. Second, we have to conquer our internal fears. Gideon was paralyzed by terror until he listened, and God provided exactly the encouragement he needed to step forward. Third, trust that unconventional faithfulness leads to ultimate victory. I mean, smashing jars and holding torches makes zero military sense, right? But perfect obedience to God's instructions brings results we could never ever achieve on our own.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder today. Will you face your own locust swarm with the faith of the 300? We all face overwhelming odds at times, but as we've learned here, the size of the opposition does not dictate the outcome. Thank you for learning with us. If this helps you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.